The second beta for fleet carriers are just around the corner, and Frontier has just announced some changes that's going to be made in this beta. Today, we're gonna run through all the changes, I'm gonna tell you what I think about it, and also what I think would still be nice if we saw changed. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Elite Dangerous with With Astronomy. So today we're going to talk about fleet carriers again, because there has been some new information released by Frontier. And this is some of the changes that they're going to implement here in the second iteration. Before we start though, I should say that everything here is subject to change. This is a beta test, so keep in mind that this is not the final truth of how fleet carriers are going to look at launch. The first thing they've announced is, of course, that Universal Cartography, UC, is being added as an additional service. We kind of knew this already. They did mention that at the end of last beta, so not a big surprise there. I still think it's an awesome change. It's really nice to see that we get that in, get a little bit of love for the Explorers. So for this one, well, we don't know yet what it's gonna cost, but we can kind of make a guesstimate, right? I mean, I think before, at the end of last beta, it was around 25-ish for every single service. If you have every single service on, base cost being 5 million, and then the total cost of all the other services being 20. So I would probably expect that you would see something like the Universal Cartography adding a couple of extra million, maybe in worst case 5, but I think that's a little high, but a couple of million extra in the upkeep. Next up, we have some information on the whole decommissioning system. This has been a much discussed topic, and a lot of people have argued that decommissioning system should be removed completely. They're going to change it a lot. They're not going to remove it completely. Here's what they put on the forum. Decommissioning a fleet carrier will now refund the full cost of a carrier, with the only reduction either being unpaid debt when automated or a static fee for voluntary decommissioning. So there's a lot of information here that is really, really interesting. First of all, full price of the fleet carrier. That means when your fleet carrier is decommissioned, you get the full price. Almost. What you do end up paying is if you're behind on your weekly upkeep, then you will end up having to pay that. That makes sense. You pay what you owe and you get the remaining of the fleet carrier back. We have to remember that as it stands in the last beta, the max price, let's say it was 25, and then plus Universal Cartography. Let's just round it up and say it's 30 mil a week in upkeep. And your fleet carrier will be decommissioned after 10 weeks. So 30 mil times 10 weeks, that's 300 million. And that is 6% of the total fleet carrier price. So that means if you get a automatic decommissioning where you leave the carrier, you log off the game, worst case is 300 million or 6%. That's not too bad. I think that's reasonable. And have to remember, this is worst case. This is if you have every single service online. Everything. Like what's it called? Like the black market thing, and everything is on. Of course, if you have less, then the unpaid rent or upkeep should then be less. The other extreme is also interesting to look at. I mean, here we're looking at the base upkeep only. That is if you have only the core services online, no additional services. Then you're looking at a 5 mil upkeep a week. That was what we had in the last one. 5 mil a week times 10 weeks, that's 50 million. That's 1%. 1% of the total fleet carrier price is what you're then going to pay if you have a automated decommissioning system. So this gives us a kind of a clue of that static fee that's going to be withdrawn if you do a voluntary decommissioning, because it makes, in my mind at least, it makes no sense if that voluntary fee is higher than the minimum fee for a forced decommissioning. Because imagine this situation here. If I want to voluntarily go out now and say, I don't want my fleet carrier anymore, I want to get rid of it. I could now have then two options. Either I could go to a system with a fleet carrier service, so I could sell all the services I have online. So I sell all the modules, all the services, and I should be able to sell those at the full price. So I get every single dime back for those. At least I think that was how it was stated in the handbook. In the last beta. Whether that carries over to this beta, we will have to wait and see. But let's assume that's still the truth that you get the full price for the modules. So now you're left with a fleet carrier that's going to consume 5 mil a week. If I did a voluntary decommissioning, if that price was higher than just leaving the fleet carrier there for 10 weeks and then pay off the 50 mil from the automatic decommissioning, then there's no point in ever doing a voluntary decommissioning unless you just want those 5 billion credits out fast. That's the only reason why I would see you would pay it if you want that cash flow now, if you need it for something else. But overall, I think if the prices from the last beta still stands, and so far I haven't seen anything that indicates that it shouldn't, then it looks like that the minimum is going to be around 1% of the total fleet carrier price, and the maximum is going to be anywhere between 5 or 6% of the total fleet carrier price. I think that's very reasonable. I think this is as close as we're going to get to not having a decommissioning system. Frontier must have a good reason why they don't remove it. And I think it must be something along the lines that they are afraid of having the game flooded with like tons and tons of unused fleet carriers. I think they want to make sure that the fleet carriers who are in the game are actively being used. And remember, with the whole decommissioning, it's not like if you go away for 10 weeks, your fleet carrier is gone. If you have, let's say you are in the army and you get deployed and maybe you got it for like half a year or a year at the time. I don't know how long people are deployed at the time, but you can, of course, store credits on the fleet carrier for years of upkeep if you want to. So overall, I think the decommissioning changes are really well balanced. I don't feel like the worst case 6%, best case 1% range. I think that's pretty good. It's actually lower than I would expect it. I would expect it to be more in line with ships around the 10% mark. But yeah, I'll take it. At least if my numbers hold, then I think it's okay. But again, we'll have to wait and see until the final launch exactly how that's going to work and what those prices are going to be. But as it seems right now, it seems very, very reasonable if you ask me. Now for a big one, and I know a lot of you guys have been asking for this. Modules and ship storage will now always be available to the fleet carrier owner. Shipyard and outfitting services will still need to be purchased to enable visitors to use them and to buy stock from the owner. So this must be a welcoming change to the large number of players who are planning to use their fleet carrier as a personal fleet carrier for your fleet and your fleet only. That means no longer do you have to go out and buy an additional service to store your own ships. However, if you wish to offer this service to your friends or you wish to sell ships or modules, you have to buy additional services. I think it's a good compromise. However, this is one of those things where I still would really like to see some changes. I think it's great to see that storage for ships and modules are available to the owner. Awesome. That means for the people who just want to have it as a personal thing, they don't have to worry about it. However, I would really still like to see the shipyard and the outfitting service being split in two. So instead of having just one shipyard, just one outfitting service, I would really like to see having a shipyard storage and a shipyard like dealership where you can sell ships. And the same with modules, having a module storage and a module dealership. This would allow for even more customization for the players. And I think there would be a lot of players who would be very interested in allowing your friends to store your ships and modules, but maybe who's not interested in paying that high price in order to be able to sell ships, myself included. I mean, that's how I'm planning to use it. I will most definitely be buying both a shipyard and a module storage service thingy, whatever, for my fleet carrier. But I'm doing it because I want to allow people to store ships and modules on my ship, not because I'm planning to sell ships and modules. Then there's another little thing here that they changed that they also did mention at the end of last beta, and that is the fact that the tritium consumption per light year has been reduced by approximately half. So that means we're going to use a lot less tritium when we're jumping. Very welcome change. I would still like to see some changes being made around the whole jump mechanic. There are multiple things that are not ideal the way they are at the moment. One of them being the size of the fuel tank. I would love to see that being a dynamic thing that we could manually resize. I mean, it takes up space. It's essentially cargo. So right now, you have that space that's available, but I would really like if we could expand that. User defined. We could still say that the minimum is the size that it has now, and we're then able to just expand it further if we wanted even more fuel storage, want to allocate more for fuel storage. An alternative solution is to allow us to remotely transfer fuel from cargo to fuel tank. Right now you can't do that. You can manage everything else in your fleet carrier, but if it's out of fuel, you need to go there yourself, transfer it from the fleet carrier cargo to your own ship cargo, and then from your own ship cargo into the fuel tank. Another thing that I would really like to see changed is still a little bit more love for explorers. And this is one of those things that I would really, really love if we could see some kind of passive refueling of the carriers. It could be an additional service that you pay extra money for, so you pay an extra upkeep to have this service running. But what it would do is like have a mining crew on board that if the fleet carriers would around a specific planet, like a gas giant with this specific type of ring, yada yada, then it would automatically begin to refill. This is again just to help out explorers. The refill rate should be relatively slow. This was something that was, I think, could be meant for explorers who like to take their fleet carrier, park it in a position, and then use it as a base, and then take trips out every day to go and explore, let's say, 5,000 light years around the park position, and maybe that fleet carrier will stay in that position for weeks. I think that would be a really, really welcome change to see something like that with an automatic refueling service for fleet carriers. And finally, if you're one of the many people who are eager to get your hands on the fleet carrier, but you do not have the 5 billion credits yet, don't worry, because towards the end of this beta, there will be what they call a beta blowout, where they're going to reduce the price of the fleet carriers from the 5 billion credits that they are at the beginning of the beta to 1 million credits. This is of course done because there's been such a huge request for people who don't have the money yet to go out and get their hands on it and try their fleet carrier. Of course they can't because they don't have the money to actually buy it yet. But I think it's a really nice gesture from Frontier to go out and do this blowout at the end. Just like let everybody like go ham, put carriers everywhere. And there will be carriers everywhere. And I guess this actually will also serve as a little stress test of the fleet carriers. I think it could actually be very beneficial for them. Because when that happens, when the price is reduced to 1 million, I would expect there's got to be a lot of people, a lot of additional people who suddenly goes in and buys themselves a fleet carrier. So it will kind of be a little stress test to see what happens when you get a lot of fleet carriers at the same time. Remember, the next beta is going to start on Monday, the 11th of May. And if you want all the latest information as it become available, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. And also, like this video if you liked it. Thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, I will see you guys in space.